The Brown County Historical Commission and Brown Woods Lyric Theater, in cooperation with the Brown County Museum and the R.B. Rogers House and Events Venue, present Bygone Brown. Episode 10, The Devil's Rope. In 1493, on Christopher Columbus's second voyage to the New World, he landed on the island of Hispaniola with a remarkable immigrant on board. Descended from the wild auroch, a fearsome animal native to the Indian subcontinent, twice the size of an average cow. Its ancestors had been slowly domesticated, then imported to North Africa, and from there into the Andalusian Spain, so that by the time of the Reconquista and the unification of the country under Columbus's sponsors, Ferdinand and Isabella, Spanish cattle were a hardy breed and good travelers. These first immigrants who splashed their way ashore in that Caribbean surf would be the forebears of the legendary Texas Longhorn. In the centuries that followed, the number of cattle in New Spain rapidly grew, although the milk and meat they provided seemed to have been principally domestic. The first recorded instance of a cattle drive from Texas seems to have been during the American Revolution, when Texas beef provisioned Spaniards through the port of New Orleans. The upheavals of the next 50 years, though, tipped the burgeoning cattle business into decline, with first Mexican independence from Spain and then Texas's independence from Mexico, forcing a pause in the markets and forcing many ranchers to abandon their land and their herds. To reverse this decline, both the Spanish and the Mexican governments offered land grants to encourage settlement from the United States, enticing Anglos into the territory to tame its wilderness, bite its Indians, and get its economy moving again. By the 1840s and 1850s, the cattle industry was again well established, and the first residents of what would become Brown County, Welcome Chandler and his son-in-law John Fowler, brought the first cattle into the area in 1856. A year later, the Coggin brothers, Sam and Modi, arrived, acquiring large acreage in what is now Coleman County. And by 1871, they had amassed a herd of more than 25,000 head. But these were the days of the open range and the cattle barons of Brown County. The Coggins and the Baws liked it that way.
Hurry up. I can't see. You ain't nervous, are you? No, I ain't. I done told you I can't see. Why'd y'all have to pick a moonless night? I'll never know. So no one to see it either. And don't rush me. Let me work.
Hey, what do y'all think you're doing? This here's private property.
After the Civil War, the demand for meat in eastern states created a market for Texas cattle, and the opening of cattle markets in western Kansas connected to consumers back east. Texas cattlemen began driving their herds as the only practical means of moving a $4 steer to a $40 market. As a result, while only a few thousand head had been sent by steamship from Texas to New Orleans before the war, in the 15 years after the war's conclusion, as many as 10 million Longhorns trod the trails north. Incredibly, by today's standards, the cattle drives not only coursed through the open plains, they generally took the path of least resistance, even if that path ran through the middle of downtown Brownwood.
Get them bolts inside quick and shut them windows and doors. Pump! Pump!
What are you carrying on about now?
The thundering herd!
Following the war, more and more settlers had arrived, and with them an increased demand for farmland. So too, the growth of small communities included the construction of houses, of churches, and of schools, and livestock roaming freely destroyed gardens and disrupted services and classes. And when the herds ambled through downtown, they clopped their hooves against the bare ground, leaving everything behind them pummeled by the relentless march as the dust from the unpaved streets rose in a cloud that marked their progress and closed the businesses they left in their wake. The hotels and saloons profiting from the cowboys who passed through, the general mercantile, the law offices, the churches, leaving them to unshutter their windows, reopen their doors, clear out the dust, and start again once the herds had passed.
Somebody ought to do something about that.
Someday, somebody's gonna.
When somebody finally did, it would be at the beginning of the 1880s. Though by then, the Indian question had largely been resolved. A new conflict over the idea of private property had emerged, this time over what the remaining Indians called the devil's rope, barbed wire. Patented in 1874 by Joseph Glidden of Illinois, these smooth strands of interlocking wire, enhanced with a thorn-like barb, proved more effective at keeping longhorn cattle inside a fenced area than smooth wire alone. Although a variety of designs would be patented, the Glidden two-point wire kept cattle in and rustlers out, while its salesman boasted of it being light as air, stronger than whiskey, and cheap as dirt. The big commercial cattle ranchers introduced barbed wire to Brown County in 1883. Spooled out and nailed to rough posts 8 to 12 feet apart, the fences proclaimed the boundaries of ownership, no less boldly than the flags that once flew overhead. The only difference being that the lords of these marked dominions were no longer distant monarchs in foreign capitals. They were cattle barons, and they were very present in local affairs, none of them more passionate than Levin P. Baugh.
Sheriff Adams, Sheriff, they cut pert near a mile of my fence, and I only strung up 2 miles.
Strung up is what we ought to do with them.
Now you listen here. Ain't nobody gonna be strung up while I'm here.
Look, Sheriff Adams, soon as I got that fence done, one of them put this note on it.
Mr. Ball, take down this fence, and if you don't, we will cut it. And if we cut it and a drop of cutter's blood is spilled, your life will pay the forfeit.
And there's my response on the bottom.
You cowardly cur. This is my fence and you let it alone. Levin, calling them names ain't no way to resolve this.
I already told y'all a way to resolve this.
And I told you we ain't gonna have no hanging. I'll ride out and talk to some of them.
How you know who they are? Let's use one of them.
Everybody knows who they are, but how's you a talking to them gonna get my fence repaired?
Or keep them from cutting mine.
If I can't get them to stop, you can always take them to court.
Court?
Yeah, like civilized people do. We ain't no savages here, remember?
We got laws, and it's my duty to see they're enforced, so don't y'all think about doing nothing illegal. We ain't have no range wars.
The cattle barons justified fencing off large sections of what had been public lands to deter rustlers and preserve the herd's bloodlines. But as thousands of acres were fenced in, small-time ranchers saw their claims swallowed up, as many of the big tracts lacked both gates and easements to permit the smaller ranchers access. Without alternative sources of food or water for their herds, these men took matters into their own hands, cutting fences on the Baugh and Coggin brothers' places. Sheriff Adams and a posse of disinterested members of the community rode out to visit with the small ranchers Adams knew were affected by the construction of fences, among them J.B. Scruggins.
How am I supposed to feed my family if I can't feed my cows?
You got your land, don't you?
It's inside that big ranch.
These men have a right to private property.
And so do we.
So what's the problem?
I can't get access to my land 'cause he done took it.
Where'd he take it, Austin?
Sheriff, because there ain't no access, when these big ranchers fence in their cattle, they're fencing out ours. And if we can't get our livestock out to the plains, where do you think they're gonna graze when they're hungry?
Rather than resolve the crisis, Sheriff Adams' overtures to the small ranchers only inflamed tensions further. Offended by the entreaties of the sheriff, the ranchers held a fence cutters convention and started organizing. In December, the sheriff got word that a crowd of fence cutters had descended on a section of the Coggins brothers' ranch. Sheriff Adams and 30 armed men rode out to the Coggin place and convinced the cutters to go home, or so the sheriff and his men thought. But 3 days later, things came to a head.
Boys in position. Y'all ready?
Ready as we'll ever be.
Hell, where are they?
If you don't see them, I'd say I done good. Look up.
I declare, on the roof.
I reckon if we ain't got the numbers, we can still outsmart them.
How many we expecting now?
Last I heard, there's 200 of them.
To our 40. I hope we don't need them.
We're fixing to find out. Here comes Scruggins.
Sheriff Adams, we don't mean nobody harm. We come in peace.
Mr. Scruggins, I'm awful glad to hear that. The townfolk will be pleased. We'll stand down if you will.
Boys,
Now, how's about you and me have us a little talk? Just the two of us.
Adams and Scruggins' talk came to be known as the Second Fence Cutters Convention, and it resulted in a truce. But the fence-cutting wars were not only waged in Brown County. Across Texas as a whole, an estimated $20 million in damage had been caused by the cutters, enough to force then-Governor John Ireland to call a special session of the Texas legislature in January 1884.
the chair recognizes the honorable member for Brazos County, Mr. Goodwin. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This here dispute's gone on long enough. We done had one civil war. Ain't no use in having another, especially one between our farmers and ranchers. Y'all know we need both, so we're gonna have to compromise.
Representative George Iverson Goodwin did just that. 10 years old when his family moved to Texas from his native Georgia, Goodwin studied law and practiced for a time in Chambers County until the outbreak of the Civil War. Enlisting in the Confederate Army, he rose to the rank of colonel, and following the cessation of hostilities, Goodwin returned to private practice in Bryan, Brazos County, where he was elected to the state legislature. Goodwin's compromise legislation made fence cutting a felony, punishable by up to 5 years in jail. The severity of the punishment satisfied the ranchers, but Goodwin's bill expected something from them in return, namely that they remove those fences that enclosed public roads and public lands that the state of Texas had retained as one of the conditions of joining the Union, and it required that the ranchers install a gate for every 3 miles of fence and bear the expense of keeping those gates in good repair. And as with every mediated solution to any dispute, neither the ranchers nor the fence cutters were entirely happy with the results, least of all Levin Baugh.
This ain't right. It's still trying to take away my property.
Mr. Ball, Levin, this is just the kind of civilized result I was hoping for.
Me losing cattle, losing my rights to my land, losing fence, and losing money? And now I gotta lose more by putting up gates every 3 miles? So much for your civilization.
Mr. Ball, that's the law now, and as a sworn officer of the law, I gotta enforce it.
All right, Sheriff. All I'm wanting to know is if you're going to enforce this law against them wire cutters as strictly as you're threatening to enforce it against me.
Testing the sheriff's commitment, Baugh brought a complaint against 10 suspected fence cutters and testified personally before the grand jury seeking their indictment. The district attorney, however, decided against bringing charges and moved that the case be dropped, infuriating Baugh and leading him to seek the assistance of a local farmer named Joe Copeland.
That damn district attorney must be one of them.
I wouldn't doubt it, Mr. Ball.
Joe, I want you to do something for me.
Yes, sir. Anything you ask.
Do you think you can get close to them? The fence cutters, I mean? You're a farmer. They'll believe you.
I reckon so. Don't hardly know. Might be dangerous.
I'll make it worth your trouble. I want you to get close to them. Earn their confidence. Go with them on a couple of raids. Hell, cut my fence with them if it helps them believe you. Then, once you've gained their confidence, let me know what they're planning and when, and I'll take care of the rest of it.
The rest of it happened on the night of November 9th, 1886, when the Cutters planned another attack on Ball's fence. But waiting for Copeland and his duped allies was a group of Texas Rangers. The Rangers killed 2 of the Cutters before they could run away, and in February 1887, Ball secured an indictment against 7 of the survivors. Though set for trial that September, the case was transferred to Bell County on the rationale that a fair and impartial trial cannot be held in Brown County, as the passions that had been so inflamed at the beginning of the decade had largely cooled by the end of it. State Representative Goodwin, the man whose compromised legislation had ended the range wars, is better known today for a bill he authored that applied federal money to found an agricultural and mechanical college in the place he had first practiced law, making him the father of Texas A&M University in Bryan College Station. Once his term in the legislature ended, he moved to Brownwood, where he practiced law for another 20 years and his son became a judge. Levin Baugh, in contrast, also returned to Brownwood after the case he brought against the men who had taunted him for so many years was dismissed, meaning that for all his effort, Baugh returned home empty-handed. Bygone Brown is a co-production of the Brown County Historical Commission and Brownwood's Historic Lyric Theater. A beautifully illustrated companion guide to the series is available at Intermission Books and other locations downtown. Proceeds from the sale of the book support the Brown County Museum of History. Recorded at the elegant R.B. Rogers House and Events venue, Bygone Brown was written by Lamar Cravens, narrated by Tommy Bailey, and featured the voice talents of Dominique Glaske, Jonathan Harvey, Levi Packer, Val Nelson, Drex Holt, Jacob Bierman, Alexander Glass, Walker Willie, Graham Allen, Susie Harkey, Tracy Brandon Tucker, Allison Diaz, Aaliyah Curtis, Mackenzie Lair, Ryan Bailey, and Doug, Shannon, and Aaron Turner.